Hello, everyone. I think we should be live now. Just a quick check if everyone is there and the chat is working. Give me 1 second. Super. Perfect. Hey, everyone, and welcome to the second session of our info series on carbon credits. My name is Thorsten. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Freeze Carbon. And we help companies to manage their unavoidable CO2 emissions and help them to connect to carbon projects out there of all kinds. And we're very pleased to dive into today's topic around avoidance and removal projects. What does it mean? What is it? And how does it work? I'll give a few more seconds for everyone to join, and then we get started. And you also have the chat available in case you want to ask any questions. Always feel free to also say hi to everyone else in the event. And great, this is working. Super. Getting a quick echo here. All right, more people dialing in. We're 6 now. Let's get started. So for today, we are talking about the two overarching carbon credit project types, being avoidance projects. In one sentence, an avoidance project is an undertaking to avoid that additional CO2 is added to the atmosphere. And on the other side, there is carbon removal projects. These projects remove existing CO2 or emissions from the atmosphere and lock them away. And there's a big discussion going around for either or, and is also what we will discuss today. What does it mean to go with one project or the other or both? And for that, I put together just a few notes. Let me call them up now. And please always put questions in the chat, and I'll answer them during or at the end as well. And let's dive into these the project types of carbon credits. As mentioned, on the left side, we see carbon avoidance projects, avoiding additional emissions. And there's 3 buckets there I want to introduce today. One, I'll go left to right. One is avoided emissions or reduction without any storage. So avoided emission means that we are not adding more CO2 to the atmosphere. An example could be we're switching our fuel. So let's say from fossil fuels like oil or gas to renewable fuels. So that can be nature-based fuels like agricultural waste. It can also be renewable energy. It could also be methane abatement. That's the third bullet there. So I'm avoiding that methane gas is added to the atmosphere. This is a quite interesting topic because methane gas is more potent to global warming and more harmful. There are different numbers out there, around about 28 times more dangerous to the global warming. However, methane, after several years, is converted to another gas and therefore less harmful, but still harmful. There is a blue arrow beneath the first white box on the left side. It's called non-reversible. This is a big benefit of these project types is if I use a different fuel type, a renewable fuel type, instead of a fossil fuel type, I have an impact which is non-reversible. So it's quite a secure impact. That's why we also have a green tick mark there. This is a project category that Freeze Carbon has on our portal and we recommend to our clients. Then there is the middle bucket under carbon avoidance is emission reductions with short-lived storage. This is the most prominent one because it is avoided damage to ecosystem, meaning, for example, we protect forest land from being deforested or logged, and therefore keep that CO2 storage in place. And then the third bucket under carbon avoidance is emission reductions with long-lived storage. These are projects in carbon capture and storage from industrial facilities. So there's a lot of talk these days that industrial companies where highly potent CO2 is being emitted can be directly captured and stored instead of these industrial factories emitting that to the outside world. Oftentimes, this is already regulated. And once something is regulated and mandatory, there is no carbon credit for it anymore. But in some countries, it's not regulated yet. And therefore, an incentive can help to avoid these emissions. And here under the bucket number 2 and 3, you see also a blue arrow, which shows less permanent on the left side and more permanent on the right side. And more permanent means the storage of these gases is longer term, more years than the other. Any questions around carbon avoidance types or anything else on that so far? Perfect. And feel free to always use the chat if you have any questions. Always happy to answer them during the conversation. And then on the right-hand side, we can go to the second big topic in blue. You see carbon removals. Here we have two categories. The first box shows you carbon removal with short-lived storage. And here we have afforestation, reforestation as a quite well-known one. So the tree planting or soil carbon enhancement. The blue arrow underneath indicates that these are less permanent. It really depends on the certification company, but this can be certified for 10 to 30 to 60 years. So really good to check that. I think there's a few novel ideas out there how to increase the permanence of the certification and of course the impact. But so far they are the less permanent ones. And then under carbon removals with longer lived storage, we see a few topics there, and they are ranked in terms of permanence. So the very first one is direct air capture and storage. Is a permanent solution for carbon management. Then we have bioenergy carbon capture and storage, meaning from a bioenergy plant that the carbon emissions are being stored. Then we have mineralization and enhanced rock weathering. Enhanced rock weathering means that carbon is, or the CO2 gas is mineralized and therefore a little bit like a crystal, so to say, or a little rock, and therefore changes the state from gas to solid. And then we have biochar. Biochar can be permanent for 100 years or 1,000 years, depending on the process. And all these carbon removal projects are recommended by us, by Freeze Carbon, to our clients. If there are no questions around carbon avoidance and carbon removal project types, I can quickly discuss the pricing behind both, but maybe giving a second for people to react in the chat if you have any questions. Otherwise, you can always send them later as well. So carbon avoidance projects have been around for quite many years now. And therefore, the process of setting up these projects and the technology is quite well established. Carbon avoidance projects in the market cost around about €5 per ton of CO2 avoided. On Freeze Carbon, we have projects starting at €7 and going up a little bit higher as well. The overall market will always also show you projects priced much cheaper than the market average of €5, but there are typically a lot of risks associated to those. It can be around additionality, around permanence, or other risks. So it's always good to dive very deep in analyzing them, because if you buy credit only because it costs 20, 30 cents per ton, it doesn't mean that you're on the safe side. So a deep due diligence is extremely recommended, and this is something, of course, we at Freeze Carbon do on a daily basis and can help you with. So carbon avoidance projects are priced, on average around €5, so rather affordable. And on the right-hand side, carbon removal, we need to make a distinction between the two buckets we see here. Carbon removal, short-lived storage, so reforestation projects or soil carbon, they can be priced between 10 to 50 euros. We see averages around 20, 25 euros on that side. And carbon removal projects with longer lived storage are priced starting at around about 100 to 150 euros for biochar. And then they go up for direct air capture for around 400 euros, and very novel technologies also to 1,000 euros. But direct air capture is around about 400 euros per ton of CO2 locked away. So the price reflects on the one side, of course, the effort behind the project, but also on the other side, the permanence for how long carbon is removed and stored away. And this is extremely clear for direct air capture, for example, versus a forest project. But all these project types have a lot of nuances to it, and it's good to dive deep into these nuances to understand each project in detail. Another topic we want to address today is the topic around, so I understand there's different projects, and I understand they cost very different amounts per ton of CO2 removed or avoided. So which one should I pick? And when should I go about this? And this is a graph you've probably seen in lots of different colors and forms and shapes. But on the path towards net zero, there's a few elements, of course, you need to take. And the first and most important one is emissions reductions. And you see that in the dark blue chart at the top of the line, where the emissions are being reduced over time every single year. Carbon credits now can help in two ways to get to your journey and to position yourself as a sustainable company. One is in the net zero year, so that's the very far right-hand side. Carbon removal projects can help you reach net zero to neutralize your unavoidable emissions. So emissions you cannot further reduce anymore. This is also supported by the Science Based Targets Initiative or by ISO norms like ISO 14068, for example. So in your target year, in your net zero year, whenever that is, carbon removal credits and carbon removal projects can help you reach that net or net zero. Additionally, on the pathway to get there as a third priority, you can use all types of carbon projects. That includes carbon avoidance projects as well, to help you address all your emissions. So there you're allowed to use both types. But the important thing is to keep the order. So first emission reductions, then reaching your net zero year, and as a third priority to address all emissions that you're facing. We have a question, maybe I'll address it right now. Does the location of the project influence the pricing? So this is a quite good question, because we see that corporate buyers typically like to buy local projects, local meaning in the same country. What we've seen in the market is that there is a price differentiation between technologies, but not extreme price differentiation between region. So only because a project is in Central Europe or in the global South, there does need to be a big project price gap. This is especially true for carbon removal. Carbon removal is more around the technology being used. On the carbon avoidance side, these projects are typically found in the global South, because the overarching criteria for any carbon credit is the topic around additionality. So we addressed this in our last session, but maybe briefly. Additionality means that a project would not have come into place if there wouldn't be carbon credit income to fund or to close the funding gap of this project. And this is typically seen in the global south. Another reason for projects being in the global south a lot is that the regulations are not as strict there. It can be for example, for around methane abatement, this toxic gas, or this gas bad for global warming, is very well controlled in more developed countries than in countries in the global south, and therefore additional incentives through carbon credits can help these countries to close that gap. However, on a corporate decision-making journey, the location of the project on a objective level is not required, because the CO2 gas or any greenhouse gas in the atmosphere doesn't have an origin location, or it doesn't have a timestamp. So you're completely free to pick the location and also the vintage of the project. And it doesn't need to be limited to anything specific. But on the subjective level, we see a lot of corporate buyers prefer to mix something in their home country or in their home continent, if they're building a portfolio of several projects. Yeah, thanks very much for that question. So thirdly, I want to show you a little bit a portfolio mix, and this is derived by the Oxford Principles. So Oxford University published Oxford Principles around which project should you mix together. And they updated this just a couple of months ago, at the end of 2023. And it basically says, ideally, every company would use carbon removal projects for their emissions. However, due to two factors of high price and low volume, low availability, this cannot be done for the global scale. And therefore, they suggest, whilst we transition to carbon removal only at a later stage, we can mix it together. And they have a bit of an offering, and we customize that. And in the three buckets, we see in the first bucket, we recommend, for example, methane gas, avoidance, or fuel switch, or clean water projects. So these are avoidance projects. And in the second bucket, we recommend biochar, especially if it's around 100 years permanence. And then in the third bucket, we recommend very long-term storage projects like direct air capture, enhanced rock weathering, mineralization, or also biochar that is on the level of 1,000 years permanency. So this is typically how we discuss it with our clients. And as time moves on, we, of course, progress more and more to the right-hand side. But the ideal portfolio would always be carbon removal. But this is quite tricky to do at the current state of the market. Perfect. This is it for today. Happy to answer any questions you have, and happy to also give you a bit of an outlook for our next session. But maybe first, any questions you have. Give some time. All right. If there's no further questions on carbon removal versus carbon avoidance, let me close by announcing the next topic. Next time, we will discuss the project type biochar, and around the topic around different types of biochar projects. I mentioned there's 100 years, there's 1,000 years permanency, but there's also different technologies. There's the artisan way of doing it, and then there's a technology-based approach of producing biochar. So we'll dive into that next time. And happy to answer one more question that came in. Can you expand a bit more on the term vintage? Yeah, true. I mentioned the term vintage. This is the year the climate impact took place, meaning the emission was either avoided or removed from the atmosphere. So with that, the project can indicate when they had the climate impact. And this is registered also on the specific carbon credit. It's, so to say, written on the carbon credit. But when a company wants to neutralize the emissions, they don't necessarily need to match the two up, because the emission, as mentioned, the gas in the atmosphere doesn't have a timestamp. All the gases out there need to be removed to limit global warming or even stop it completely. So therefore, the vintage is an indicator for the industry to discuss when a climate impact took place, but it's not a hard requirement to match that to your annual emissions that you want to neutralize. Are there any further questions? Maybe I'll give a bit of time, I think, because there's 30 people now on the call, 31. Super. If you're interested to receive the presentation slides I showed today, please send me a direct message on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to share them with you. Or if you're interested in general to talk about carbon project types, carbon credit pricing, what a portfolio could look like, and how all fits together into your carbon strategy, you're always happy to reach out to us at Freeze Carbon, and either here on LinkedIn or, of course, via email. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day.